Hello again. This is part 3, and I hope I can make this part smaller. There are also some things which I don't agree with. When I look at the map here, but first let's look at the explanation of this. So here it's talking about a part in Iran and Golistan. And then it talks about the Celtic people and the connection between the Celts and the most probably with the Iranians, with the Persians. So first, there is a myth. I'm skipping the myth and I'm mentioning this part. Please have a look at these stone figures. Look at these. Look at these. And look at these. And also look at these. So these are actually very close to T-shaped pillars. And these stone figures, these carved stone figures, they are actually the predecessors of the proto the Turkic peoples, the proto-Turkic peoples. So have a very close look how they resemble the T-shaped pillars of Göbekli Tepe. So definitely there is a connection between the Proto-Turks and the Göbekli Tepe complex, the Göbekli Tepe part. It shows, of course, it says Iranian influence, etc., etc. I wouldn't put it that way. I would rather say that it is a common culture because Turks had the same values in the past. Proto-Turks, the people in that region, the Zagros, they had all common cultures, influences, that's what I think, because of the Central Asian effect. Yes, so it was all a common culture. Imagine Central Asia being dominant over the South, being dominant in the West, in the East, and even in the North. Because it's all the same myths, the same, as you see here, the same stone carvings. And later you see this in the Turks, in the Balbals. So these are definitely the predecessors of the Balbals. You cannot say it is Iranian. It would be very offending to the cultures to say it is Iranian. It was a common culture, having passed through Iran maybe, going into Anatolia, going into Europe. Yes, it was a common culture. You cannot separate it. And something that is very, very important here is the Elamite, right? The Elamite languages, Elam was closer to the Proto-Turks. It was definitely not Iranian. So, if the Celts had, let's say, a common ancestor, yes, it might be Anatolia, it might be Central Asia, but to claim other things would be wrong. Because you are definitely disregarding Turks, you are definitely disregarding Turkish culture, Proto-Turkic culture. You are actually ignoring them. Again, we have a common culture. If we talk about horses, it is definitely not European. Horses are a primer importance to the Proto-Turks. Chinese people built the Chinese wall in order not to be confronted with the Turks, because the Turks were riding the horses. So how come that you disregard a community, okay, and putting everything that is connected with horses to the Indo-European culture? How old is Indo-European anyway? It is not that old. It has a history maybe about 5,000 years, but not more. I mean, but if you consider the Proto-Turkic culture, if you include Central Asia, the ancient North Eurasians, if you include the agglutinative languages and the spread of the common culture that has the Turks, the Turkish tribes in it, you can speak of thousands, tens of thousands of years. So what is Indo-European anyway? Indo-European has its culture from Central Asia. It has its common culture from Kazakhstan. It has its roots in ancient North Eurasians, and they were the ones who domesticated the wolf. So today, when we look at the Turkish culture and when we worship the wolf, they are making fun of us. Please. Why do Turks worship the wolf? Why do Scandinavians worship the wolf? So there was definitely a common culture in the past, which was also a common culture in Indo-European. Please don't separate the cultures. Indo-European, Scandinavian, Proto-Turkic was once one common culture. You cannot discriminate cultures. So very cynical, actually. I have to mention the style of this author. I'm so sorry, but the way he talks about the deer and the horse, etc., he is talking about Iranian influences and India and Central Asia, etc. But in parentheses, he has Pamir, Kazakhstan, Russian, and Mongolian Altai regions. So this means actually that he disregards the Turkic regions and puts forward the Persian and Iranian part and the Indian part, the Dravidian part. That's interesting. Okay, I would agree with the fact that he says Celtic and German cults of the horned horses originate from the Middle and Central Asian ones, pointing at the Middle and Central Asian horses, etc. So I can agree with that. But then he goes on and says Afghanistan or South Asian homeland. So even as he says the horses originate from South Asia, I mean, how many people were riding horses in South Asia? And he goes on with Afghanistan. Yes, I can understand why Afghanistan, because there are Indo-Iranians there. And Southern Asia is because of the Indian language there. So even here, the author discriminates between Indo-European and the Ural-Altaic languages. That's what I can say, or the cultures there. So one thing I want to mention is, if there is a continuation of one culture, of one, let's say, of one feast, if, let's say, Mongolians are still celebrating something in a traditional way, if Kazakhs are doing their rituals in the same way that they did thousands of years ago, or only take burial mounds or the burials or the mini kurgans of Anatolia and the Turks, if they still bury their dead in a way like they did thousands of years ago, but only in the mini version, this means the continuation of the culture, this means the continuation of the language, and this means that the oldest language that has been spoken was the Ural-Altaic languages. This is the oldest form of the languages, because there are still the same burial traditions. The kurgans are in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, especially Hungary, the butchered Hungary in the First World War, still has these kurgans. So why is it that in the First World War so much land from Hungary was given away, and there is now only maybe 1/3 left, and most of the land was given to the Balkans, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Romania, because it had the richest soil in Europe. It had the richest culture in Europe. And when Viktor Orban claims that they are the descendants of the Huns and the Turks, He is damn right. He is, the Hungarians are the only remnants, and they are the only so-called rememberers of the Kurgan culture, and they worship their predecessors. They have anniversaries every year celebrating the Kurultai because their ancestors were Turks, proto-Turks, and they speak a Uralic Altaic language, which is connected to Turkic languages. So, okay, if you have a look here, you see a common culture. I wouldn't say this is an Indo-European culture. It is a common culture. It was not Indo-European. I definitely disagree with this term. It can be a common culture with the Indians. Yes, that's right. It even looks a bit Chinese, right? If you have a look here. And it's also a little bit Turkic. So 3 in 1. That's what I would say. So horses were not only important in these communities. So we continue. And here we have other things. Okay, I'm skipping the religious part here about Christ, etc., and the Virgin Trinity, etc., etc. But fact is that that's what I think. Fact is that the big religions, the 3 big religions, they were all under the effect of Hinduism, Buddhism. I don't know what the Torah was affected by, but they say that the Torah was affected by Siberia. That's what they say. And some even claim that Torah comes from the Turkic word töre in Turkish. So Torah, töre, tradition, it means tradition. The content of, I don't want to mention actually a religion here, but the content of Torah is very, very disappointing, because it talks about killing people. That's what it talks about. Kill them wherever you see them. Okay, who do you want to kill? So you have to ask the Jews who they want to kill. But anyway, so if you look at the Bible was definitely no, not the Bible. I'm sorry, the Christians and the Christmas thing, etc. Okay, Christmas was definitely affected by, say, they were definitely affected by the Christmas tree, which was originally celebrated by the Turks, the proto-Turks, the Tibetans, mostly Central Asia, right? So Central Asia, Siberia, they had the tree figure, the tree of life, the tree figure, and Tibetans and Turks, they still bind certain things to the tree. So this part, the Christmas tree part, is definitely from Central Asia, from the Proto-Turks. Christians also took parts of Hinduism, the thing of the candle, etc. Mother Mary most probably stems from, I think, Vishnu. I think it's Vishnu. So the goddess of the Hindus. So they took most probably Mother Mary from there. And Buddhism definitely affected Islam. So that's what I think, because the Buddhists who worship, who pray, they do this like the Muslims. How the Muslims lay on the ground. I mean, the Buddhists, they lay on the ground when they are praying, and the Muslims, they perform their ritual prayer, namaz, in a similar way. So definitely Buddhism affected Islam. Also, by its teachings, it affected the Islam. So I would say actually the continuation of Buddhism and Hinduism can be seen in these two religions. I'm not sure about the Torah. I think they messed it up, the original version. That's what I wanted to say about religion. I'm continuing. I just grabbed myself a cup of coffee. So now, this map is important. It actually talks about the Celts here and how they got their language and how they got affected by it. But I want to mention here something else. Because I'm Turkish, I want to mention the importance of this region and some changes and some additions that I want to make here. Now, look at the map, and I want you to look at the languages that are put here. So, and the regions where there are the certain civilizations. So, first, of course, I want you to look at number 1. So number 1 is actually close to the Fertile Crescent, where actually Sumerian was formed. Now, I want you to look at the Celteminar culture. Here, this is said to be the place of Turkic, where modern Turkish was formed. So this part is actually Uralic Altaic. So it is the Urals, but the Turkish was formed here, according to Osman Karatay, our historian. So look at that part. It is very close to Kyrgyzstan. Lake Aral is there, so it is Central Asia. Yes? So Central Asia is the homeland where Proto-Turkish was formed, where Hungarian was formed. And so it came to Anatolia. And of course, Hungarian went to Europe. I mean, the languages. So, look at number 1 again, and look at the Celtiminar region. I presume that the branches of the Proto-Sumerian culture and the Proto-Sumerians, they were from a Central Asian part. They came from the Urals, the Altais, a Central Asian part. Most of them were formed by the community where the Tarim Basin cultures were formed. So the Tarim Basin was actually Ural-Altaic, and it was the same culture as the Sumerian culture, which settled down at the Fertile Crescent. So these were the predecessors of actually the Hindu, the proto, God, I forgot the name, the Tarim Basin cultures. And as I said, they settled down the Euphrat and Tigris region. So it was definitely proto-Turkish, with a mixture of the Central Asian flair, a little bit of mixture of Indian, of the elite of Indian, most probably, the Hindu Kush as well, and also of the Zagros Mountains. So a mixture of these communities formed the Sumerian culture. So it continued, and if you have a look at number 2, you see the Semitic influences. So think of Proto-Semitic and Akkadian and Assyrian. They are all Semitic in language. And imagine a culture which gets eradicated by Semitic tribes. Imagine a language that gets influenced by Semitic. What happens is the vocabulary comes into your language, and slowly your language starts to die. This happened with Sumerian. So Sumerian, in original an agglutinative Central Asian language, which was Ural-Altaic, with a mixture of a little bit of Hindu Kush effect, like in the Tarim Basin. Yes. Later was under the effect of Sanskrit. It was under the effect of the Semitic languages, and it slowly started to get the vocabulary, and it turned into Proto-Anatolian. This means it turned into the Hittite language. Yes? So this is what I think, this is what I claim, um, because the Hittites, the Hittite language also has Proto-Turkic words. It still has Proto-Turkic words in it, but it is very much under the influence of Proto-Persian, I mean Semitic vocabulary. It is very strongly influenced by prefixes. It started to get prefixes, and it also started to get the vocabulary of Semitic languages. But the structure stayed the same, like in Persian. It was an agglutinative language. It is definitely not an Indo-European language. It is a fusion of Indo-European and, I mean, don't say Indo-European. I mean, I would rather call it, it is a fusion of Semitic and agglutinative languages, like Persian, right? Persian today is the same like Hittite, but I would also not call Persian Indo-European, because Persian has the same structure like subject, object, verb, and because of the structure I would not call it Indo-European. I would definitely divide the languages into their structure. I would maybe I would define them according to vocabulary and according to structure, but definitely Indo-European is not that old as Uralic Altaic. That's what I claim. Okay, and even the Caucasus, if you look at the Caucasus, there are agglutinative languages, and okay, it says here the steppe. The steppe had an Indo-Europeanization. Can we call it Indo-Europeanization? I would say no. It didn't become Indo-European. It was under the effect of Indo-European communities, but it didn't become Indo-European. In culture, if you look at Ukraine, if you look at parts of, let's say Bulgaria, etc., if you look at the Balkans, they might seem European, but actually they are not. They are still Tatar. They might be under the effect of Slavic languages, yes, but if you look at their roots, they are Tatar, they are Turk. I mean, I haven't made a research on Ukraine that much, but I know that there used to live more Tatars than now. And after the Second World War, that's what I know, that Ukraine lost. I mean, the Tatars in Ukraine lost ground and they had to leave their lands. Most of them were killed and deported. They had to flee, like the Ahuska Turks. So it was actually not a good thing for the Turks, the Second World War. And the First World War was not good for the Ottoman Empire and the Hungarian Empire, because they were both Turkic. they were both an empire which was full of Turks, um, and the lands that they dominated were definitely mostly Turkic and Turkish inhabited, and with the wars, the Turks, they just became divided, and they were formed into new grounds and new lands, etc. And the Slavic population, the European population, they took over the land of the once inhabitant Turks. That's what I think. Maybe it is the characteristic of Europe. And in the past, the wiping out of certain communities was maybe also proto-Turkic. So this may have happened also in the past, that these areas were inhabited by the Neanderthals, and I know, as far as I know, there is Neanderthal gene in American Indians. You can find Neanderthal gene in the Altai. So it has more Neanderthal gene in the Altai than in Europe. So maybe one reason is that maybe Europe wiped out the Neanderthals. That can be possible. And one thing is here, that's what I saw, Indo-Hittite. I really don't agree with these terms. I mean, what does it mean? Indo-Europe Kurgans, Proto-Indo-Europe Kurgans, Proto-Indo-European Kurgans. That's not the right word. Kurgans belong to the Turks. So if you call it Proto, it has to be Proto-Turkic if you want to use it, or Proto-Central Asian, right? But if you call it Proto-Indo-European, Kurgans were never European. They belonged to Siberia. They belonged to, okay, maybe Eastern Europe, but they belonged to Hungary, and Hungary was descendant of the Avars, of the Kupchaks, and of the Kumans, and of the Pechenegs. They were all Turkic tribes, and the Kurgans, they are a burial tradition of the Turks. European people don't bury their dead in kurgans. They leave them flat on the ground. It has no burial mound. It has even not a single hill on, it doesn't even have a mini kurgan on the cemeteries. I mean, on the graves in the cemetery. I'm sorry. So this is why I don't agree with the terms called Indo-Hittite, or they call it now Indo-Uralic. What does Indo-Uralic mean? I mean, why do you come up with these new words? Call them Proto-Turkic. Call them Siberian. Okay, you can call it Proto-Anatolian. I'm okay with that. But you can call it, okay, you can call the Kurgans maybe steppe people, or yeah, that would be okay. You can call it Uralic Altaic Kurgans, but definitely not Proto-Indo-European. What does this mean? Do you make Hungary now Proto-Indo-European? I read Gesta Hungarorum, and in that book, it talks about the Central and Western European parts and how discriminating they were towards Hungary, towards the east of Europe. And they didn't welcome the Hungarians at all. And the Hungarians had to fight for hundreds and hundreds of years in order to be accepted by the European community. So it was all discriminations and killings that they had to face. And the Germans, they mostly fought with the Germans. And later they mixed with them because they had no other choice. And the Germans, they took over Hungary. I think they divided Hungary. So the Germans actually stole their culture. And now Hungarians don't even know some of them don't even know their descendants. But they're definitely not Indo-Uralic, or they're definitely not Indo-European. Okay, and the thing about Rig Veda or Rigvedi, or the thing about the first Indian thing, I think it was an ancient Siberian belief system, which was originally oral traditions. So in the oral traditions, it was talked, it was told from generation to generation to generation, maybe thousands of years, and it had a very ancient history. So what happened was that the Rig Veda was first maybe written down by the Indian tribes. So that's why India has it. But it is not an Indian tradition. They were they were the first ones who wrote it down, or who chiseled it into stone, etc. So because Rig Veda is also present in Scandinavia, so it must have had a Uralic Altaic root that spread to Scandinavia and also to South Asia. So once, I think, it had a more worldly effect than a discriminating effect like today, because today you see the world is more discriminating than uniting. Okay, I'm skipping to the Paleolithic period now. Now look at the Paleolithic map. I love this, and I want to magnify it because I see here my ancestors. Look at this huge map, and I'm going to tell you something. Look at the ancient North Eurasians. Unfortunately, we don't have the North and South in American part here, but imagine the Bering Strait and imagine an arrow going there. Now I want you to think of the agglutinative languages as well. And I want you to look at, I want you to consider the haplogroups and the cultures that were served to the letter cultures. So the ancient North Eurasians, we have the basal Eurasians, we have the Caucasus hunter-gatherer, we have the ancestral South Indians, and we have the other cultures, Scandinavian hunter-gatherers, etc. So, I want you to consider the agglutinative languages, as I said, and the ancient North Eurasians, and the effects that they had. So, please have a look on how they spread over Central Asia to parts of Iran, and then from Iran through Anatolia into parts of Europe. So this means all this area was speaking or is speaking subject, object, verb structure. And I'm sure that Persia and Iran, Proto-Persia and Proto-Iran, Proto-Iranians, I strongly think they had an agglutinative language with not much prefixes before they mixed with Semitic groups. I also think that Çatalhöyük and Göbekli Tepe culture had an agglutinative language because of the ancient North Eurasians. Of course, not like today, but they had, because it is all the area of the agglutinative language part. So most probably these were the areas where the first agglutinative language was spoken. So also have a look at this part. If you look at basal Eurasian, what comes out? Where is this? Oh God, I'm not very good at geography, but so here there is more ice. You see here. This can be Scandinavia, I think. Is it? Isn't it? Right? If you have a look here, or is it Russia? Okay, parts of the Urals maybe. So if you look at the Urals, parts of Urals, the Hanti-Mansi, etc., they also have agglutinative languages. Finland has agglutinative languages. So the Finns, Siberia, all over Siberia, I mean, affected Europe with mostly agglutinative languages, because I know the cat people, they have a subject, object, verb language. That's right. But I'm not sure if they speak an agglutinative language. I think yes, but with the effect of prefixes. So Maybe the effect of prefixes is because of Slavic languages around them. I mean, not around them, but maybe because of Russian. It maybe took prefixes. But all over Siberia, there are Turkic groups. And the cat is surrounded by Turkic groups with agglutinative languages. So the Paleolithic was most probably heavily influenced by vocabulary of the first common vocabulary of the Ural-Altaic languages. That's what I think. This is why Indian Indo-European has some common words with Ural-Altaic. So also the ancient North Eurasians, they affected the Japanese language. So we see agglutinative languages affect there. And the Caucasus had also agglutinative. Most of them are agglutinative languages in the Caucasus. So, and also the Caucasus languages have something in common with the American Indian languages, the Nadene or Atabashkan. So Atabashkan actually is a Turkish word. And I know the Incas and the Mayas, etc., and they have some common Turkish words. So I would claim that the Paleolithic times, the ancient North Eurasians had the first common vocabulary with the Turks, the proto-Turks, like vocabulary together with the American Indians. So most of the languages of the American Indians is agglutinative. So they had a common vocabulary with the Urals, Siberia, the Altais, India, Iran, I would say East Europe, even then, maybe the north of Africa or one part of Africa, but maybe the north of Africa, I'm not sure, Basque, and the Caucasus. So these were agglutinative, and of course Finland, the Turkic tribes, of course, they had agglutination. Most probably they had a common vocabulary, and maybe one of the oldest languages, because the mathematical system in Turkish and Hungarian and also in Finnish is very, very very, very strongly structured. It has a strong structure. So how did they build this structure? It has to have thousands of years labor. So this is a wonder of the of the people, of the ancient people. So here we have also haplogroups. So it's talking about haplogroups, but I'm skipping that, I know. We mentioned that before. Maybe I can very shortly touch on the haplogroup P, which was found in the, of course, I mean not found, but the ancient North Eurasians had haplogroup P, and yes, and it spread from Eastern Siberia, it says here, and Central Asia. Yeah, so it was not only one part of the region, it was also the Urals. And you see here this haplogroup P is seen 28% in the Altai, 17% by the Uyghurs, 10% by Turkmens, and 9% in Iran. So this means that these Turks, they have the oldest haplogroups. So let me show you here, right? They have the oldest haplogroups. And okay, P, don't forget haplogroup P. Yes, and if you consider the date of this haplogroup is 29,000 BCE, that means over 30,000 years ago. Okay, and then we come to another map which shows the cradle of the European races. Okay, I actually don't like the word race, but if you want to consider it, okay. No. It is not there, because it is again discriminating Eastern Europe. It is discriminating Finland. Finland, is Finland Siberian or European? It is discriminating Basque. It is discriminating Hungary. It is discriminating Spain, because Spain is more under the Arab influence. It is discriminating Italy, because Italy, the Italians, they are more Mediterranean. I mean, they have their ancestry from different regions around the Mediterranean. Anyway, I don't like this map, as I said. You cannot take one part of Asia and say this is the part of the European races, because yeah, it shows the Indo-Aryan races, right? So what is Indo-Aryan? I mean, what is Aryan? Arı in Turkish means to be pure. So Europe has nothing to do with race. Europe should be a culture. I mean, if you divide into races, you are a racist. So you cannot put this map here and say, okay, here comes the European race from. It is very wrong to say that. Yes, There is the Mediterranean race, but the Mediterranean race is not European, right? Okay, and imagine the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals, they were in Europe thousands of years ago. Well, where did they come from? I mean, so weren't they European? Again, haplotypes. God, I think I'm going to skip this because this is too much for haplotypes. I want to focus more on the culture, the common culture, rather than haplogroups. But here we can see the effect of the haplogroups, right? So here we see haplogroups H and K in India. We see haplogroup L. We see haplogroup K. I think this is Central Asia, or is it Southeast Asia? Ah, God. Anyway, so very close, the haplogroups K and F. And haplogroup P. So this is Central Asia, where the ancient North Eurasians were. So haplogroup Q is East Asia, that's what I know. And R is also Central Asia. So haplogroup PQR. I wouldn't agree with haplogroup K and P here. I think the ancient North Eurasians were the ones that came to South Asia. It was vice versa. I mean, P migrated to South Asia together with the other directions. It didn't only come to India, because India has lots of R haplogroups, R1a especially. It stems from the ancient North Eurasians, because the P haplogroup, the ancient North Eurasians, were the ones who traveled everywhere, not only to India, but also to Scandinavia, to Europe, to Anatolia, to the east, to the American continent, and especially to Eastern Europe. So they formed the proto Ural-Altaics, and they were the ones who formed the so-called Proto-Indo-Europeans. Yes, that's what I can say. I mean, one part. I mean, most of the human population stems from this region. Okay, it says here the out of India theory. Now we have heard of the out of Africa theory, out of China theory. Now comes out of India theory. How about out of Siberia? I mean, because the haplogroup P shows that half of, say, 1/3 or half of the population, the world population, stems from these ancient North Eurasians. I mean, the Eurasians, yes. So the most probably there used to be certain communities in every continent who spread the cultures. I mean, not only in one continent. Most probably, it was out of Asia, not out of India. I would say out of Asia. One was out of India. Maybe another one out of China. Why not? So maybe there were three main races. Out of China, out of Asia was most probably maybe a common ancestor, archaic human. Maybe this was the Denisovan. Out of Asia was most probably the Neanderthal, who spread from Asia to Europe, and out of Africa was the modern human, who raided all over the continents. I mean, they interacted, of course, and they joined, they connected, they intermixed, and yes, human races, not races, but communities were formed and cultures were formed. There were common cultures, uh, traditions, etc., and languages were formed. But the first language was the agglutinative language, and it was the dominant culture, the dominant language, the dominant, let's say, not culture, but the dominant oh, anyway. So out of Asia was dominant. That's what I can say. And who was that? The Neanderthal and the Denisovan. So they were actually the predecessors of this culture. And later, okay, or maybe an intermixture of the modern human joined, and these three archaic humans, whenever they met, it gave way to good skills, um, innovations, inventions, etc. Yeah, because they used their brains and skills developed, etc. And with the skills, also languages. Their languages became richer and vocabularies were formed. Yes. There is a part in this PDF where it talks about the Scythians and the Pannonian Basin, but there is one mistake here. They don't mention the Hungarians, the Huns here, who were actually the descendants from the Scythians. The Hungarians are the descendants of the Scythians and the Pannonian Basin. Not one word is mentioned of the Hungarians here. They talk about the Sarmatians, the Scythians, the Veneti, the Sarmatians, and they think they are the Serbs, but they talk about the Thracians, etc. And they talk about other European tribes, but not one word is given to the Proto-Hungarians. So this is another mistake. it talks about Ukrainian, Polish, Transylvania, but Transylvania was Proto-Hungarian. So this is the truth. I mean, here again, incorrect information. So not one word is made, not one word is linked to the Hungarians, because Hungarians, actually the predecessors of the Hungarians, the Scythians, who had a common root with the Turks, with the proto-Turks, they gave the culture to the West. They gave the European heart, they gave the European spirit and the soul to Central Europe and Western Europe. Western Europe and Central Europe didn't have a culture before that. They owe it to the Proto-Hungarians, the Proto-Huns, I mean the Scythians, the Pannonian Basin, where they, I mean Attila and so on, and his Turkic tribes. Again, there is a mistake. This person describes the word scythe or skuth in accordance with, okay, he thinks it is the origin of the word, where was it? Where did he mention it? God. Skitatise. This is wrong. It has nothing to do with that word, because Herodotus mentions that Scythians would call themselves, or it was written in the form like Skutai, and Skutai is a Turkish word. Skutai is a name of a male. We have lots of names ending with I. We have Kutai, we have Yargıtay, Kurultai, all, ending in I, and Altai, for example. And Hungary still celebrates every year the Kurultai. So definitely the word Scythian is wrongly used. The original is Skutai, like Herodotus described it. Another thing is that there is something mentioned here between the Proto-Slavs and the Thracians, and that they are related. So if Proto-Slavs and the Thracians are related, they must have come from Anatolia, because Thracia and the Etruscans, they have, I think, something in common. So if Scythians have together something with the Thracians and the Proto-Slavs, then I'm not sure about that. This doesn't make sense. But it can be in this way. Scythian and Thracian, if they had similarities, if they had linguistic similarities, this means that Anatolia was agglutinative Scythians spoke an agglutinative language, and if the tribe names were similar, this means that they were related, and Thracians were Proto-Turkic, because Scythians are considered Proto-Turkic. And if Thracian was Proto-Turkic, this means that they were formed by the Hittites. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, if they are related, the Scythians and the Thracians, that means that the Thracians are Proto-Turkic. Because it talks about linguistic similarities. If they have linguistic similarities and if they are related, this means they must have come from a common ancestor. And if they say, okay, the Proto-Slavs are ancient Proto-Slavs, God, then somewhere they must have had a common ancestor. Maybe it was the ancient North Eurasians who spoke an agglutinative language. And somewhere they split and went their own way. I mean, Europe went its own way, and the other regions went their own way. But who stayed closer to his roots? It was the Scythians, it was the Thracians, it was the Anatolians, it was the Asian continent who stayed more to its customs and traditions. Europe lost it. Europe didn't continue with the burial mounds. Europe didn't continue with the ancient cultures. Europe was rootless. Europe didn't defend its roots. I mean, if they had, it is claimed that they had a Kurgan culture. So where is it? I mean, where is it now? Why does nobody bury their dead in a kurgan then? In a mini kurgan like the Turks? The Turks have mini kurgans. Yes, they bury their dead in mini kurgans. Okay, maybe in a Muslim style, but we still do have our dead buried in mini kurgans. And we have balbais. We have mini balbais. Maybe we don't have figures on them, but the stones are similar. They are shaped like the T-shapes in Göbekli Tepe. And maybe Göbekli Tepe was an ancient memorial place for the dead. An ancient memorial place to worship, to commemorate their dead, together with, of course, ancestral feasts, and together with that, maybe they also celebrated the stars, etc. But if you take the ancient stones in Göbekli Tepe, whatever they served for, our ancestors, they took it from Göbekli Tepe and they made balbals, and they made gravestones. So it is an ancient tradition which was taken from Göbekli Tepe. So definitely Göbekli Tepe had something ancient North Eurasians in it. The ancient North Eurasians were definitely in Göbekli Tepe, and they had a common culture there. That's what I think. So if Scythian and Thracian was connected, they were definitely Proto-Turkic. It says here, the Celtic origin comes from the Anatolian Thrace. So if Thrace and the Celts are related, the Celts come from Anatolia, and Anatolian Thrace is Proto-Turkic. So it is not true that the Celts were Persian then, or they were Iranian. This means that the Celts had more a Proto-Turkic culture. I mean, it is claimed here. The only thing I know is that Barry Cunliffe talks about, and I believe in him, it is more trustworthy, his knowledge, that the Scythians, they helped the Celts. I mean, they taught the Celts. So they must have been close to each other, the Scythians and the Celts. But the Scythians, they were most probably more ancient. Okay, now we come to Troy. Troy is, that's what I think. If you consider Thracia and Scythian related, definitely Troy is a Proto-Turkic city. So if they consider the Celts being descendant from the Trojan region, I would say then that the Celts are related to the Turks, but I have never thought of that. The only thing I know is that Troy and the Thracia and the Etruscans, they were related to the Turks. The Hungarians are also related to the Etruscans because they had the runic system. They had the same common vocabulary for mom, dad, etc. So again, the author is combining the culture of the Celts, of the Balkans, and of the Slavic people to the Dravidians. I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't think that Dravidians play an important role here. They're totally different. I mean, Dravidians, the Celts, Scythians, the Balkans, and Slavic people. There may be a connection between them, but it is definitely not Dravidians. It might be Central Asian, but it might be Proto-Russian, but definitely not. It might be Ket, it might be the Ket people, it might be the Proto, it might be the Siberian people, the Proto-Siberians, but not Dravidians. I personally think the Slavs, the some parts of the Balkans, the Slavs, and most probably some of the Russians, the Baltics, and the northern European part can be connected or might be connected with the Proto-Russians. The Siberian, the Siberian part that didn't have an agglutinative language, or let's say that had a slightly different vocabulary than the Turks, the Proto-Turks, or that didn't speak maybe Indo-Uralic, that had a subject-verb-object structure like the Russian. I think they were more Proto-Russian, who were the Slavs. I mean, the Proto-Slavs were most probably the Russians. But I heard actually that Russian has lots of Indian vocabulary in it. That's right. So how come that Indian or Persian is found in the Russian vocabulary? It can have been. I think it's still. I think it is still the Central Asian or the Proto Central Asian effect of the ancient North Eurasians. I think it is the ancient North Eurasians effect that it had, because it is not purely Indian. It went everywhere. It went everywhere. I mean, were the Dravidians nomads? Were the Indian people nomads? Were they hunter-gatherers? I mean, the ancient North Eurasians, they were hunter-gatherers. That's what I think. So ancient North Eurasians, they traveled everywhere. And most probably with their slides. Those they most probably they founded a vehicle and they traveled everywhere, or they started to domesticate the wolf, and with the wolves they traveled everywhere with their slides. I mean, because it is their it is their culture that is found everywhere. It is their myth that is found everywhere, and most probably the common vocabulary that they taught all over Asia, they brought all over Asia, and the parts of Asia, they took the vocabulary. And they formed the languages. So this is interesting about the language. It says here, Slavic languages and Russian, Slavic language, and the structure it has is also found in Dravidian and Burushaski, it says here. I'm skipping the details about the language. Okay, and then somebody called Tonoyan Belyayev, he wrote that Dravidian and Indo-European are the only two Eurasian language families. Huh? Is Dravidian is Indo-European a Eurasian language family? Oh God. Anyway, Dravidian and Indo-European are two Eurasian language families possessing a system of 3 grammatical genders. So they have grammatical genders: masculine, feminine, neutral. Dravidian. Ah, that's interesting. So it cannot be true then that Turkish is similar to Dravidian. I would not say so, because Turkish has no gender. It is Indo-Uralic. Indo-Uralic languages have no gender. Dravidian might be agglutinative, but if it has genders, this has a different logic. So most probably Dravidian was affected by Indian. So yes, Slavic languages, if they have masculine, feminine, and neutral, Slavic most probably affected Indo-European languages. So I would maybe call Indo-European Slavic. That's what I would do, because Indo-European is definitely a false term. Slavic would be more proper. So Greek would be Slavic, German would be Slavic, English would be Slavic, French would be Slavic, and the other, Russian would be Slavic. I think the oldest language out of them is Russian. That's what I think, because it stems from Central Asia. Maybe the ancient North Eurasians had a certain structure, which also, or a common vocabulary with Russian, that served the Slavic languages. And I know from Russian that it took lots and lots of Turkish words. It has lots of Turkic words. That's what my students say. So I would say that the oldest form of Slavic languages would be Russian, and the oldest of Ural-Altaic would be Turkish. Yes, Turkish, and the related Turkic languages. So interesting thing is that one person called Schildmann found out that the Sumerian language and the Indus script also, together with the Balkans, had a certain connection. That's interesting. So here again, the pyramids are mentioned. That's interesting. Friedrich Skakach, most probably it's read in this way. He found close similarities between the scripts of Glosel, Vinca, which is in Serbia. Glosel is in France. the pyramid of Visoko, which was in Bosnia, Sumer, Ubaid, and the Tepe Yahya in Iran. Tepe Yahya is actually a Turkish word. So it can be a Turkish region in Iran where Turks live. So that's, yeah, if there are similarities, definitely they had close connections with each other in the past. And then also the primitive Chinese script, and then Albania, and then connections with the gods, and then Etruscan, and in Yakut, and in Sumerian. This means that belief was global. Not only belief, if there were similarities with the gods, etc., they were definitely believed by the oral tradition. I mean, the communities and the ancient North Eurasians, as I said. This is definitely the remnants of the ancient North Eurasians, no doubt. Look, now the writings, the similarities of the writings. Look at the Bosnian pyramid, the Carpathian Basin, okay, the one in France, Alvao, Tepe Yahya, the one in Iran, Sumer, Egypt, Crete, yes, which is definitely not Greek, Troy, which is definitely not Greek, and Glosel. I can tell you which ones are Proto-Turkic here. I would say Bosnia, the Carpathian Basin. I would say Tepe Yahya, Sumer, Crete, and Troy. 6. And how many are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 60% out of these are Proto-Turkic. You see the Proto-Turkic effect here? And okay, it also gave way to Egyptian culture as well. So here again, there is the belief system. I'm skipping that because it's dealing with religions. I don't want to get into that again. Here there is a conclusion, a personal conclusion. So they say about Celtic that it comes from the Yamna culture, etc. So actually the Yamnaya, and then it goes on. It has links with Eastern Indo-European, it says here, which has something together with Greek, Phrygian, Indo-Iranian, Slavic, etc. I'm skipping these parts. I don't like the word Indo-European, and then they come up with Phrygian and Indo-Iranian and blah blah blah. So all these terms, made up terms, they just confuse people more. So Schmidt here said that there are ancient links between Celtic and, okay, let's say Armenian. So there are similarities between Celtic and Armenian, Albanian, Greek, Phrygian, it says here, Iranian, right? And most probably a little bit of Indian. It's possible. But Armenian has not only these influences, Armenian was also very much influenced by Georgian and Turkish and the Azeri Turkish agglutinative languages. It has very much agglutinative effects in its language. So, okay, it goes on talking about Slavic languages and the influence of Germanic languages, blah, blah, blah. It goes on with Cimmerians and then Ukrainians, Thracians, oh God, pre-Hellenic. Now, pre-Hellenic is definitely something about Anatolia, Thracian as well. I definitely think they are Proto-Turkic. Forget about Gimbutas, because her theory is just killing it. Here it's a mixture. It's a mixture. Talking about the Andronova culture and referring Iranians and etc. to that culture, leaving out other cultures because it was a mixture of cultures, if you say so. I also know that Proto-Turks had something common with the Andronova culture. So, and they come up with Nostratic languages. Oh, come on. Oh, God. All these terms. So, imagine Slavic languages, right? And they have common vocabulary with Sanskrit, Dravidian, Burushaski. What does this mean? They have a common vocabulary with Southern Asia. Okay, so Southern Asia, how did Southern Asia come to Europe? There must have been one mediator, and that was Central Asia. Yes. Exactly. Most probably, that's what I think. Most probably, males married Southern Asian women and they went to Europe. And that's how the language in Europe became Slavic. That's what I think. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. The ancient North Eurasians must have taken Southern Asian wives because they have to teach their mother tongue to their children. So that's what they did. I mean, they taught their mother tongue. They went on teaching their children in Persia, in Russia, and then they went over to Germany, England, and all the Slavic languages. I mean, because Slavic is not that much different from the other European languages, except the Ural Altaic languages in Europe. Yes, that's my only conclusion that I can say. Forget about the rest.